Hello everyone and welcome to the show. I'm really excited to introduce today's guest to you, Jasmine Leyva. Now, Jasmine is a filmmaker and actress based in Los Angeles. She's got a Bachelor of Arts in TV, Film and Media and a Masters of Fine Arts in Screenwriting. She worked as an associate producer on an NAACP-winning docuseries called Unsung, and shortly after, she was given the opportunity to write and produce On Being, a docuseries highlighting dynamic entertainers in film and music. Jasmine's done everything from court shows, she's casted for Food Network productions, and she's also made strides in front of the camera, starring in commercials and print ads for major brands including Nissan, Sony, Uber, Apple, American Express, Elle magazine, and many more. She also starred in the Lifetime show My Crazy Ex, along with doing many other TV projects. Now, happy to be doing what she loved, but simultaneously wanting to tell her own stories, Jasmine decided to focus on her own productions. In 2019, Jasmine and Kenny Leyva produced their own feature-length documentary, The Invisible Vegan, a film that chronicles Jasmine's personal experiences with plant-based eating and also explores the connections between plant-based eating and African roots. Jasmine, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
What a wonderful resume. It's wonderful to speak with you. I'm looking forward to digging into some juicy topics with you today. But first of all, tell us a little bit about where you grew up and, any kind of, where you're from and any experiences that you experienced when you were young that have informed who you are today.
Oh, absolutely. So when I grew up in DC, and I remember when I was young, there was this gifted and talented program, and I got chosen for the program, and I was really into the acting component. And I remember the teacher, she gave me a script, and I just fell in love. And this is when I was young, like I was a third grader. I wasn't even old enough to participate in the Shakespeare program, but my teacher gave me the lead role. Next thing you know, I'm like on the front page of the Metro section of the Washington Post. Wow. For my performance. And from then on, I just, I fell in love. I was going to actors studios on Saturdays in all the school plays. And then when I got to college, I also had a love for, doing work behind the camera. So like, this is a talent that just kind of snowballed into what you see today.
Wow, that's amazing. So, because I was going to ask you whether, when you made that decision to kind of go into this as a career, because obviously, your qualifications reflect, a love of wanting to get into this business. So it started at a very young age.
Yeah, amazing. And it's one of the careers that people, they try to shun you from it, if you want to do TV and film or you want to be a singer, people treat it like, that's not really a thing. That's more of a hobby. You want to do something serious instead of saying, no, just stick with it, but really hone your craft because it's super competitive.
Yeah, and I was going to touch on that. But so was that the message you got? Like, were your family and your school, like when you were young, were they supportive of, like, once you said, right, I'm actually going to do, this isn't just a fun hobby, I want to do this as a career, and what was the reaction of people around you?
So I actually, for a while, because I was that person that was always picked for stuff, you get a lot of hatred. So then, it became, I wanted to dull my light in order to be accepted. So I stopped. I remember I would get offered the lead in the school play and I would say, I don't want it, give it to someone else. And even when I went to college, I went to college for marketing and I was in Atlanta and I remember just having a moment like, Jasmine, what are you doing? Forget what everyone is talking about. Go to school for what you want to go to school for and start doing what you love again. And, underneath it all, like my mother, she was always the one that was 100% supportive. But there were just other naysayers that I let get into my head. I'm glad I kicked them out.
Wonderful. Oh, thank you so much for sharing that. I think that's so important to hear that especially what you said about dulling our own light, because, you know, people don't like it because you're getting attention or you're getting picked. But obviously you're being picked because you are good, and that's a good thing. So I love that you made that decision. I love that you made it early on, because I certainly hear about people who like go into whole careers, you know, for decades sometimes, and then it's not until they're, you know, much later in life and they go, oh, you know, I wish I'd followed my passion. I wish I'd done this. So I love that you shared that, and you just kind of, yeah, went for it. So you've mentioned it is a very competitive industry, and particularly, you know, LA, you know, and it can be quite a brutal industry as well. I mean, you know, well, first of all, tell us how you got your foot in the door. So you got your qualifications, and that's great. And obviously, you know, kudos to you for doing that, but people can get qualifications. A lot of people out there with qualifications, getting your foot in the door into an industry like this can be quite challenging. Can you talk to us a little bit about how you kind of got your first kind of step on the rung of the ladder, if you like, to get into that world?
Sure. So one thing I don't like about TV is nepotism is very real. Who you know is very real. And, you know, I was going to school for TV and I was applying for internships. I wasn't, you know, getting any hits. And then my mom's friend knew someone at BET and they hooked me up with an internship. And from there, you know, but from there I worked my butt off. It's just like, okay, I was given this opportunity, maybe unfairly, but I'm not going to take it for granted. I'm going to prove that I belong here. So, you know, I stayed there for a semester and I didn't get hired. And so I was like, I want to do a double semester. I want to do it again. And, you know, the next semester they were like, hey, we needed a production assistant. And that started my whole trajectory.
Wow. So was your internship, was that a paid internship or an
Oh, it was working for free. There's
working for
nothing.
free? I thought so.
I was working, it was a nice amount of hours too. I want to say for the second go around, I was just like 40 hours for free.
Wow. Wow. Gosh, it's yeah, it's yeah, I know. I think there's I think there's people trying to put a stop to that, or to at least pay people some kind of stipend. But and I can kind of see both sides, because I guess if you're really kind of getting that on the job training, that's great. But it can also end up being, I suppose, it can be a little bit elitist, because not everyone is in a position to be able to work that amount of hours for free. So it's an interesting one, isn't it?
Exactly. And then, you know, the industry, they just do, you know, now when I was younger, you know, and I was 19, I'm so desperate to be there. I didn't really care how I was treated. But now as someone in my 30s and I see how they treat interns, it's like you have someone working 40 hours a week for you and you don't even take the time to remember their name, but you ask them to go fetch you coffee. Now that I'm an adult, like I know, like this is so wrong. You know, if you are going to, you know, take these students and have them doing this work, they shouldn't be taken advantage of. And I think that's what's happening.
Right. Well, I was going to touch on that, because obviously, you know, we've heard some not so great stories coming out of the industry, from the whole Me Too through to, you know, certain we won't name any names, but certain high profile TV shows having their staff coming out and saying we've been treated really badly. And of course, the whole, you know, lack of recognition and casting of people of color, you know, with the Academy Awards, other awards. What's been your personal experience of that as a woman in the industry, and also as an African-American woman in the industry?
Put it like this, now that Ellen's going down for bullying on her set, I almost rolled my eyes, because I'm like, this toxic environment is so common practice,
Really?
that I don't feel like Ellen should be the one going down alone. I feel like maybe a good 75% of the industry needs to be tanked for the way that they treat people. Like the way I've experienced racist things, I've experienced sexist things. People are treated like, I've seen people bullied to the point where they have to go to the hospital and they're sick. And at the time I was so young, and it's just like, you watch these things, you know they're wrong, but at the same time you have to pay your rent, you know, and you don't want to get blackballed, because there's this, oh, if you burn this bridge, you might not be able to get a job. But they can be very, you know, the industry can be very toxic, very sexist, very racist. And I can't wait until a lot of these people start getting called out. And it's not just, you know, we can't just blame like the affluent white man, because it's not. I've worked on shows where I've had Black women treat other people like scum. It's just
Wow.
it's just a toxic industry.
Wow. That's shocking.
But there are good people in it. You know, there are good people there that are well-intended. But I think you have a lot of TV and film is an art form. So instead of attracting a lot of artists, you have a lot of kind of type A, I want to be cool people in there. And then, you know, these inflated egos end up taking something that should be beautiful and artistic and making it ugly.
Wow. Thank you for sharing that. And that relates, it's weird, like you said, I thought you explained that really well about the creative industries, because like my background is journalism. So I worked as a journalist for nearly 25 years now. And I've seen, I guess, something similar in that it's that ego. So instead of, sharing these stories, like you think it would, to be share these stories, to make a difference kind of thing. And instead, you're right, particularly in those kind of the managerial sides, it can become part of your identity. And then the ego comes, like you say, oh, I'm cool, or I'm baby, you know what I mean? That power thing. So gosh, that's really shocking. How did you handle that, particularly as you were so young? And like you said, you've seen people like bullied to the point of going to hospital. What did you do to kind of, for yourself, to kind of, protect yourself, or just to handle all of that?
Honestly, I think I missed out on, I didn't move up as quickly because of it. For me, my integrity means a lot to me. So when I was at jobs and people treated me poorly, I stood up for myself. Like, for example, I was on a show and I was super sick. I had these horrible migraine headaches. My arms kind of had carpal tunnel because I had been working straight without weekends for over a month. So I was burnt out and sick. And I told my executive producer, instead of just taking off like I needed to, I was just like, hey, listen, I'm falling apart and I need a break and I'm really sick. I can try to hold out to the end of the week for you to find someone else to kind of come in so you don't lose work. But I'm sick. I can't do this. And I remember like the executive producer and another producer looking at me like, well, I'm sorry you're sick, but we have deadlines. And and I went to the doctor, and the doctor is like, dude, you're sick. And he wrote me a prescription. He's like, no, here's a prescription. You need 10 days off. And I took that prescription to my boss. When I came back, the supervising producer wouldn't look at me or wouldn't talk to me, and they didn't bring me back. They were going to promote me for, the next season. But since I stood up for myself when I was sick, they didn't bring me back. And there have been a lot of things like that. A guy harassed me at a job and I complained about it. And what happens? They bring the guy back and they don't bring me back. So,
wow, gosh, that is so sad to hear that. But I think it's important that I really appreciate you. And I just want to acknowledge you speaking out about this, because a lot of people don't. And like you say, it's that, and you've said that's exactly what happens. It's like, oh, well, if you don't, you won't ascend. And it's like that whole culture needs just a big shake up, needs people like you at the helm of it. So I guess on that, I mean, just out of interest, so you've worked both behind the scenes and in front of the camera. Which do you prefer and why?
So one thing I love about working, in front of the camera is, while people who work behind the camera kind of get treated like trash, sometimes if you work behind the camera, like if I'm starring in commercials, I mean, you get treated like a princess, down to like, I have to tell people, hey, like I'll be walking and it's drizzling outside and somebody holds up, comes over to hold up the umbrella for me. And I'm like, wait, no, I can hold the umbrella myself. They're like, no, you don't do anything. Don't exert yourself. And so I do like that. I like the just being treated nicely, Yeah. But I equally like both.
Yeah.
No, you know what? I actually like directing more because there's legacy in it. I can create something and I can say like, yo, I gave this idea to the culture opposed to, you know, I act in something where I'm just bringing someone else's idea to life.
Right. Yeah, it's interesting. I've heard of a few women. There's a British actress who is really good, who said something similar. Like, you know, she's, you know, well known for being an actor, but then she said, you know, I actually really enjoy like the producing and the directing side of it, because you've got that control, like you said, of kind of telling more stories and different stories. So yeah, I love that. Thank you for sharing that. So just on that, you've talked about, and I saw you posted on Instagram, and I think you've been quite vocal about that whilst, you know, you enjoyed, you know, being in the industry, despite all the, you know, stuff we just talked about, you know, you enjoyed being in the industry, but you were feeling frustrated that you I guess were telling other people's stories and you wanted to tell your own. And so I think at the time you decided to just kind of go, okay, that's it. I'm going to quit the 9 to 5 and, you know, do my own stuff. Tell us about that. Like, was there a particular moment that you made that? And that must have been quite scary, like kind of taking that leap, or maybe not. Just talk to us a little bit about that.
So I was always Miss kind of independent. Like, I have to do everything by myself, don't get any help. And, you know, I was working on a documentary series, and I went to the producer and told him, you know, I had ambitions to produce and write. And I remember him chuckling, you know, and kind of saying like, well, writing, that's a big thing. You know, it was this, and I took it as, what about my dream is funny to you? You know, and it kind of like let me know that was the signal, like the bat signal. Like, okay, Jazz, it's time for you to go, because they don't understand your talent. They don't see it. And you can't wait for someone else to see your greatness, because then, you know, you'll get older and, you know, your ideas grow stale, you'll get burnt out. And it's just like, no, while you have the fire, you have to go. So, you know, I talked to my man, who's extremely supportive, my partner, and he was just like, if you want to, you know, if you believe in this idea and you want to do it, like you can do it. And I'll just take over the bills, and you don't have to worry about this job. And
Wow.
That's what I did.
Wow.
I let go of the job. I had like all, you know, my savings, and I pretty much not blew it, but I spent it all on, you know, camera equipment and things to make my doc. And yeah, just invested in my.
I love that. I love that. So tell us about the documentary. So it's the Invisible Vegan. Great title. Tell us about the title, and yeah, just tell us a bit about the film and what it means to you and the stories that it's telling.
Okay, so the title, The Invisible Vegan, there's this book, The Invisible Man by Ralph Ellison, you know, a prolific African-American author. And in the intro, he says, you know, I feel invisible in white spaces because they don't see me. They kind of only see my color. And then I feel invisible in Black spaces because I don't fit into a certain stereotype. And I was just like, oh my God, that is how I feel with my vegan journey. You know, I saw the mainstream vegan movement and I'm like, I don't feel like I fit there. And then when I would talk to my Black friends about veganism, they're just like, girl, you on that white people stuff. So it's just like, I felt invisible. So my film was pretty much a response to that invisibility. You know, when you look at all of the vegan documentaries that were out prior to my film, on the subject matter, a lot of them, you know, were very Eurocentric. They had, you know, a white male lead. Only one that I know of had a female. You know, she was a, you know, Caucasian lead. And if you saw Black people in the narratives, they were the people that needed to be saved. Or it's just like, oh, here's this token expert, or, you know, this kind of token person participating. So I was just like, okay, this is why people associate veganism with whiteness, because veganism is only presented through whiteness. And I just decided to use my passion, my skills, my talent to kind of be the change that I wanted to see in the world.
Amazing. Now, I believe in the film you talk about your own journey to plant-based eating, but you also interview lots of other people, like Tracy McQuirter, I believe, you know, amazing public health professional, and lots of wonderful people. But you also make the connections between veganism and African roots, and how the Western diet that a lot of African Americans eat actually stems from slavery. Do you want to just talk to us a little bit about that? Because that's something I think that hasn't really, like, as you say, it hasn't really kind of been out there in the so-called mainstream or white stream, vegan movement.
So yeah, so our food culture, a lot of times we just get kind of pigeonholed into this one category. When you think about Black food, there is, Black food is soul food.
Mm-hmm.
And, soul food, yes, it was something that kind of stemmed from slavery. You had people in a very difficult situation, and they took what they could. They took the scraps and made a delicacy out of it. Like, that is genius. But the thing about it is, a lot of our culture, or in the history and the information that we receive about our culture, it always starts with slavery. And our culture is more than slavery, even though it's like, yes, this is what we ate during this certain period, and this is what it evolved into. There were things happening before that, before we came to America, and I just wanted to, make sure that, people, Black people, were kind of getting a more empowering narrative about who they are.
I love that. What's been the reaction to your film? So I know it only came out in 2019, and it's obviously, I'm sure it's going to get even bigger and in more places. But what's been the reaction to it so far from both, the vegan community, but also, as you say, the Black and African American community?
So I'll start with my own reaction to the film. So when I first saw it, I started crying because I thought it was horrible. I looked at it.
Oh, I thought you were going to say because you were so moved by it.
No, because my budget was so low. There were so many things that I couldn't afford. Like, I didn't have, I couldn't afford like an audio guy and a camera person to work each thing, and makeup and proper lighting. And I'm just looking at all the technical kind of failures, and I'm just like, oh my God, this film is awful. And my friends were like, yo, let's just watch it and see if we can try to shape it up. And two of my friends watched it, and then after the film was done, they were like, not only was this not bad, but it was really good. And then the woman who watched it, she went vegan like the next day after watching it. So surprisingly, yeah, everyone, I've heard mostly good things. The vegan community has been super receptive, except there's like a small, portion of the animal rights community. When they see it, they're just like, oh, well, this should be about the animals. The animals is the main reason why someone should go vegan. And I guess what they don't understand is, just because that is what appealed to you, that might not bring everyone into the vegan movement. And I kind of made my film according to what I thought my audience's priorities were. And right now, I said, you know what, people in our community, they're more concerned with their health and their grandmother's diabetes than they are with the condition of a chicken or a cow. And that's just, that's just what it is.
Yeah, and it's about meeting people where they're at.
Exactly.
Yeah, and I guess on that, this is probably a nice segue into the Divinity Coalition that you're part of, and I think you're also their research producer, which is and the campaign is calling on Vice President-elect at the time of this recording, Kamala Harris, to go plant-based, to eat plant-based for 31 days, to take the $1 Million Vegan Challenge. And part of that, or a lot of that, is around health. It's about addressing issues around the current coronavirus, but also what they're calling the shadow pandemics of food insecurity and, the racial and gender-based structural inequalities, people of color who are particularly impacted in food deserts and places like this, who don't have access to these healthy, a lot of the healthy plant-based foods. Why did you join the coalition, and why do you think it's important for someone like Kamala to embrace plant-based eating and promote plant-based nutrition?
So me, as when I went vegan, my choices impacted the people around me. I see it where just certain friends and family members who I never thought would go vegan went vegan. And that's the kind of influence I had. And I'm not even on the level of a Kamala. So I think when you have someone, yes,
just putting that out into the universe. Yeah.
Be president, who knows? But
I would love that. That would be great.
If you see, people start seeing role models like Kamala eating plant-based, that will get people's attention. So one of the reasons why I signed up is because I just want to be a part of that. I want to be a part of that movement. I think in the future, like, people are going to realize, like, yo, this food system is not sustainable. We need to do something else, and we need to do something more mindful. And I'm glad to be at the helm of that instead of on the back end.
Wonderful, wonderful. It's great to have you as part of that. And yeah, I'm pleased to be part of that coalition, which at the time of, we're doing this interview, it's starting to gather momentum. So I'm excited to see where that goes. So you released your film in 2019, and I'm sure you probably had some plans, for 2020 to promote that, maybe work on some other projects. Obviously, 2020 has been a doozy of a year. How has the whole COVID-19, how has it impacted your work on what you do, either, the promotion of the Invisible Vegan or any projects that you were planning to do?
So, for me, I want to say first and foremost, there have been so many people who have been really impacted by the coronavirus, losing loved ones, losing employment, losing their financial footing. So, I'll tell you what I've been through, but just know it's not at all like a complaint, because I know that I got off very easy. So, my vegan, I was kind of touring and, going around the country talking about this stuff, and it was going really well. Of course, when COVID-19 came, that kind of shut me down. I was in the middle of about to receive a professorship where, I got relocation packet emailed to me, and then COVID-19 is just like, yeah, I guess we're not really hiring right now. So doors did close for me, but and I had a short film that I wanted to take through the film festival circuit, but then film festivals weren't really a thing. So a lot of things for me were shut down, but other doors open. I was now I'm working on another documentary about eating disorders in communities of color. I did want to pursue a documentary about the food system in prison, and to try to advocate for better food for prisoners, since they're a group that I feel like are left out of a lot of mainstream conversations as well. But, with COVID, it's like there's no way I'm going to be able to get into a prison right now. And a lot of the interviews that I wanted to do were, across the country, and I don't want to do a bunch of flying. So, yeah, the Food Disorder Project, a lot of the interviews were just in Los Angeles. And I'm making it work. I'm adapting. And I think that's what we humans, that's what we can do. So whatever your trial or tribulation, if you can, don't look at it like, oh, this door closed. Just look at it like, I'm being funneled towards another door, and I just have to be creative about, yeah.
I love that. It's so important, isn't it? The whole adaptability and flexibility. I was listening to Brene Brown on one of her podcasts, and she was saying something similar about, like we have, like, literally, we kind of have to, I think the essence of it, she puts it much more poetically, but is for us, we have to get kind of comfortable with uncertainty. Like we're looking for certainty, for safety, but at the same time we also have this need for adventure, which and sometimes they can be at odds, and certainly this year is just kind of really thrown up. And as you say, I completely agree with you. Some of us, it's, I'm so grateful. I'm in Sydney, and we've been quite lucky here, and and all of that. But yeah, it has, like, when we particularly seen the entertainment industry and the arts and events shutting down, and that's been quite sad. Particularly with governments. Kind of, I think there was an awful ad I think it was the UK, that had a picture of a ballerina saying her next career is in IT. She just doesn't know it yet. Like, it was a really awful, like, basically telling all arts people, just retrain. You've all got to retrain. Forget all the creativity. Go into IT or something sensible, kind of thing. And that kind of messaging, I thought was quite sad. So it's great to see someone like yourself, kind of just being creative. And that new documentary sounds wonderful. So I look forward to hearing more about that. So I'm going to ask you a few they're kind of rapid fire type questions that I ask everyone. So hope that's okay, but you can answer them however you like. What is the most courageous thing you've done, and what does bravery mean to you?
I would say, honestly, the most courageous thing I've done, one of them, I'm doing it right now. I had a foster child over the summer, but it was a child that I knew. It was a teenager that I knew. So when he left, there was a vacancy in my home, and they called me about a baby. Now, I don't know anything about babies. I'm around a baby like once every other year. And initially, I'll say initially I said no, because I was just like, no, I don't have any baby things here. I would have to go out and get everything and just learn everything. And then I checked myself and I was just like, Jasmine, someone just called you and said a baby doesn't have a home. And your response is like, well, it would be too inconvenient to, try to do that. And I'm like, that's the problem with America right there. Like, we want to do right, but we only want to do it when it's convenient. So it's like, no, inconvenience yourself, challenge yourself, bring this baby in here and keep them alive and help them thrive. And it's definitely been a challenge.
Wow. How long have you had the baby?
For about 3 weeks.
Oh, 3 weeks. Wow. So you really are in the, wow. Gosh, that's amazing. I wasn't expecting you to say that. But that was a very cool answer. And what does bravery mean to you?
Bravery, for me, bravery is standing up for something when you have a lot to lose.
I love that. That's a little meme. I can see that. That can be going into a meme. That's a really good quote. I love that. Now, what about leadership? How would you define leadership, and what style of leader are you?
So when I'm directing when I'm directing shoots, the most important thing to me is making sure that everyone on set is having a good time and feels good about what they're doing. I really think, you can get performance the other way by being the slave driver, by using negative reinforcement. But if I have people under me and they're dreading coming to work, or they are feeling like emotionally not well because of something that I'm in charge of, then I don't care how much I deliver. I'm a poor leader. So for me, I think taking care of the people under you and making sure that they are well on the inside and out, that is a good leader.
See, that's why it harks back to what we said earlier. That's why we need people like you in these big mainstream networks getting these big deals, because that is, and I love that you've done that, because a lot of people, like, they would experience what you've experienced, like being treated, like rubbish, and then do the same, like repeat that behavior. And something, you've just got to stop the cycle. And I love that you're doing that. That is such a good message. That's absolutely wonderful. What do you love most about yourself?
Whew. I love that I march to the beat of my own drum, and not in a way that's kind of intentional and cliche, like being the contrarian just to get attention. But that's just who I am. I just feel like, dang, Jazz, you're special. You're actually unique, and you're your own person, and you have your own thought process. It's cool.
I love that. It's very cool. I love that. And finally, what have been a couple of key lessons that you've learned throughout your life that you would like to share with other vegan women leaders?
Key lessons that I've learned.
Or any tips or particular, I don't know, pearls of wisdom, nuggets of wisdom, because pearls I don't think are vegan. Well, anyway, many nuggets of wisdom.
It's the wisdom. Okay, for me, at the foundation of everything, there's the core, your heart, your mind, that's the core. So kind of for me, ambition, that's second. I am very ambitious, but don't have so much drive and so much ambition that who you are as a person suffers because of it, and degrades your and don't let your integrity get degraded trying to, chase certain things. Like, at the end of the day, it's not worth it. If you are living a life where you are not smiling and you are not around people that bring you joy and doing things that bring you joy, to me, that is not success, no matter how far up you are.
I love that. I hope a lot of young people hear this, and it's not just young people, but I think particularly at those times in our life, and I know I've experienced the same when I was young, it's that success. And I mentioned, like with the journalism, you know, once I had this particular editor job and I just loved it, and of course I'd get free tickets to go see events and shows, but then like the GFC hit in 2008, and so they laid off a load of us, and I just felt like my whole identity had just gone in like a second. I was devastated. It actually took me, I'll be perfectly honest, it actually took me a few years to really kind of get over that and come to terms with it. I was just, you know, it's like, who am I without this? And I ended up with 2 frozen shoulders because I was working like full on hours. The people that owned the publishing company were, you know, lots of issues there. Like you said, you know, they're coming to work, and the team that I worked with was awesome, but like the publishers, it would be really, really stressful. So I end up physically with the thing, but I was like, oh, you know, this is my dream job. But then when it went, it was like, wow, who am I? And you're right, that's not success. That, you know, it's, yeah. So I love that you shared that. And so I look forward to you know, making those inroads into like the mainstream. So on that note, where can we find you online? Where can we watch The Invisible Vegan and keep up to date with you and what you're doing?
Oh, absolutely. You can check out The Invisible Vegan on Amazon Prime. It's on Tubi TV, which is a free app. It's on Quelly TV, which is the first Black female-owned streaming service. And then it's also on YouTube and it's split into sections. So say you have a friend and you think like, they're not gonna watch this whole film. You can pick out a section that you think might resonate with them.
Oh, that's
and you
clever.
can find me, you know, I'm like everyone else. Like I'm on the gram, I'm on Facebook. I'm not super active, but I'm there. You know, I'm on Twitter. I have a TikTok, but it's a joke.
What's your website?
You can go to www.theinvisiblevegan.com, or you can go to jasmineleyva.com.
Lovely. We'll put those links on the show notes page. And it's been so lovely speaking with you, Jasmine. I love what you're doing. I feel personally really uplifted by our conversation today. I think it gives me hope that you know, people like you are just going to be making a real big difference in the creative industries, which is much needed. I love what you're doing, and I'm looking forward to checking out more of it. So thank you so much for joining me today. It's been a real pleasure.
Oh, no, and thank you. Like, I appreciate you for using your platform to kind of get these messages across. So much respect.